Yeah, here.
And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Xanadu Gallery online critique group session. Today is Wednesday, March 3rd. We ran into some technical glitches getting Josh on, but we've got him now, so we're good to go. I'd like to welcome you all to the session and give a big welcome to Joshua. Welcome, Joshua. We're glad to have you here this morning.
Hi, thanks for spending some time with me and giving me some thoughts about my work.
We're excited to do it. So, Josh, if we can, let's start by having you talk a little bit about your background, how you came to be creating the art you're creating. You're located in Colorado. Are you originally from that area?
I am. I'm a native to Colorado. Not many of us, but so yeah. And I started really early, being with an infatuation with art and design, and throughout school, that's kind of where I fit in, just in the art classes. And I was really lucky to still have those when I was in school. And then after high school, I went into machining and learned precision manufacturing, and then eventually ended up going back to school for art and metalsmithing and design. And then I ran a designer jewelry studio for a prominent designer for 14 years. And during that time, I started building up all the tooling required to do the kind of work that I do. And very recently, I walked away from that and started running my studio full time.
And so that's got to be, that's quite a moment as you make that transition and decide, okay, I've been doing it with and for someone else, and now I'm going to be jumping in and doing it on my own. Talk a little bit about what that experience was like as you made that move.
I think jumping is a very good word there. It feels kind of like jumping off a cliff, with no parachute or backer, because I'm not coming from money and stuff like that. And I saw the production and design and that side of the business, so I'm really comfortable there. But the marketing and selling and stuff is a whole, and business is a whole new ball game, which is quite overwhelming, but a little exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit about that. But let's start by looking at your work. And you can talk to us a little bit about kind of what your approach is to, maybe talk a little bit about the development of your style and the techniques that you're using, and what your approach is to composing these pieces.
So yeah, my style's definitely been an evolution. I first started off with kind of found objects like industrial scrap and metal, and just finding unique pieces and designing pieces off of that, and which I grew a lot. And but the work was it didn't sell a ton, and maybe wasn't at the higher price point I wanted. And so I started progressing and looking, and I wasn't expressing stories and ideas as much as I wanted to. So as I progressed, I started experimenting in different metals and growing my design vocabulary, and finding a voice. And so I eventually landed on stainless steel and bronze as my favored mediums, just because of their durability outside. And I really like honoring the materials and kind of colors that naturally or semi-naturally come with them. And the piece we're looking at here is called Explorer, and it's just exploring the idea of mankind as an explorer, and carrying the weight of humanity and knowledge on its back. So that's kind of where that came from. And I really like texture. And so this piece has a lot of texture. You can't quite see in that photo, but and it's all, I have a thing in my studio. I really like hand making everything, rather than sending it off to a foundry, basically designing it, have other people make it. Everything's handmade, hand textured. Everything I like to do on my own or get people to help me do.
And so are you, in terms of the bronze and stainless, is some of it cast or is it all fabricated?
It is all fabricated.
All
It's
fabricated.
TIG welded and then tool marked to get any kind of texture.
And talk a little bit about kind of the range of scale of the work. These two pieces that we're looking at are tall, large scale, clearly could be indoor, but also seems like they could work very well outdoors. Kind of talk about your thought process as it comes to the scale of your work.
Yeah, so I've been making my kind of maquettes in like the 12 to 18-inch size. I've been encouraged to maybe go a little larger with that. But then I have been making large pieces. I really do like outdoor pieces. It's kind of where you feel the most proud and kind of the most glory. 9 feet's about the largest piece, 9, 10 feet's about the largest piece I've made. And I've been definitely making and selling those for the last 4 or 5 years pretty decently. Um, and I would like to go even bigger than that. But bigger than that tends to either need to be commission based or public art kind of based, just due to cost of materials and time.
Yeah. And talk a little bit then about, as you've been creating your own work and that kind of that transition. Well, let me put the question this way. When did you first start selling your own works? Was that before you had made the leap to doing it on your own? And then what's been the process for kind of getting the work out there and in front of people to be able to sell it?
It was before that. So I started, even in college, I started selling or installing in sculpture parks. And I'd say for the last 10 years, I've been selling work, just kind of what falls into my lap through friends or acquaintances, and then eventually a gallery. And that's kind of how I funded building my studio, which takes quite a bit of tooling. So a large investment there. And then about 2015, I started working with an art consultant who placed some commercial art and then put me in touch with a gallery. And I also do one really large like outdoor show, kind of show and sale each year, one of the prominent ones in the US. And so the gallery and that are kind of been how I've been getting out there. And now that I'm doing it full time, I'm gearing up and really ramping to try to expand that, pick up some more galleries and look for some more shows nationally to do.
And what is your production like? How much work are you able to produce out of your studio, let's say, in a given month?
It kind of depends on the scale. And I'm getting used to this whole not working for somebody else, because that was a real drag on the production line. But I would say I can get probably large piece and a small piece a month, depending on how large the piece is. Some of them may take a couple of months, but yeah, I'd say. But if it's just small work, I can, do 4 or 5 a month probably.
Okay, good. So I think that gives us some good groundwork to understand a little bit of your background and the work itself. And so now I'd like to open it up to our group to talk a little bit and get some reactions to the work, what we're seeing in the work, and thinking in terms of just the impact of visual impact of the work, and what you're seeing in terms of Joshua's consistency and the body of work itself. And so I'll throw in a couple of reactions that I got via email. Laura says, sculpture is not my arena, but even if it were, I think I'd have to pretty picky to find areas that need improvement regarding your art. However, I don't get a sense of scale from the photos, so I'd love to see the sculpture photographed in some sort of context that clearly shows their relative size. And that does have to be a little bit of a challenge, right, Josh, to give people a sense of the scope and scale of the work that you're doing.
It is. I've especially where I live, I'm up in the mountains, so it's kind of tall pine trees and kind of rough ground around me. I have been having my photographer start photoshopping some of the larger pieces into backgrounds, but I'm hoping to start just kind of randomly going out to some parks and placing them and photographing them live so they're not photoshopped in there. It's
See.
just kind of getting that process worked out.
Yeah, yeah, and certainly, I might just throw out there that as you have pieces that are sold and go into place, boy, if you can get good photos of those sold pieces, that can start to help give the sold pieces in situ. That can really start to give a sense of the scale as well.
Yeah, I do have a few of those. I didn't put on your online thing, but it's real hard with the one prominent gallery I work with. He tends to keep some of that to himself. I do if he does get photos, I tend to very slowly get them.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Deborah from Hollywood in Florida says, I love this work, creating abstract work myself. Joshua's art speaks to me. The use of materials is compelling, and each one has a spirit and energy that moved me. And I think that was kind of a common reaction. A very evocative work, captures attention and pulls us in. So I would love now, some of you who are here in the session live, if you want to click on the hand icon or throw your hand up in front of the camera, I would love to get your initial responses to the work and what your response is to Joshua's explanation about how he came to create the work and the process. And as usual, if I don't get a response, I'll volunteer some of you. Gordon, let me start with you if you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Morning. Gotcha.
Okay, great. Yeah, boy, the work is very elegant and simple. It reminds me of Brancusi and its simplicity and its elegance and stuff. When I first got the email, I just looked at it real quick. I didn't look at the dimensions, and so I had a different take on it, and not getting the scale. And when I looked at it again this morning, I thought, wow, these things are big and bigger than me, and that really changed my whole perception of the whole thing because what I kind of like about the abstraction of it is that it's very contemplative. When I don't know what the scale is, I'm looking at it from that kind of perspective, and I kind of like the fact that it's totally contained, and it's I struggle for how to describe abstract stuff because I do that. It's relational is one word. I think of it as like a kind of ontology where it's all self-contained and it's very contemplative like that. And then when I think about it in the bigger scale, when I looked at it the second time, it becomes like monumental, and that changes the whole way of relating to it. I sort of see these things like in corporate lobbies or something like that, and so therefore my relation to it as a viewer is going to be different from that perspective. And so that's just one comment. It's not really a criticism or it's just the fact that it would be great to see. The other problem is that you don't get to see these things physically. And so the material is critical, I think, in these types of sculptures and just how you relate to the whole thing. It's so minimal that every little aspect of it becomes important. But it is what it is. You have to see it as a photograph and stuff. One comment I would make about that very last one with the disc and it's this one here. So this is just take this for what it's worth. When I look at this, I kind of look at it almost like a logo. And I'm sort of thinking this would be a great logo for the Space Force, get rid of that hokey Star Trek thing, because it kind of operates like that. There's kind of almost a calligraphic or something symbolic about it. Where I see a competition is in the surface of it, whereas the other ones, they're more harmonious for me. This is less harmonious. This is interesting. This sort of stands out uniquely. It's almost like you find this in a Buddhist temple or something, and it's more literal like that, more representational like that for me. But in the other one with the symbol, when I look at that one, the competition I see there between I don't want to know what to call it, the patina or whatever. It competes a little bit with the purity of the symbol itself. I wonder what it would look like with different textures on it. Again, take it for what it's worth. But anyway, that's my.
Yeah, and Joshua, let me take your reaction kind of to two real points, or let's start with the last one and kind of maybe you can talk a little bit about this piece and how it was created and the inspiration, and then we'll talk about photos.
So this piece is called Between the Sexes, and it's just kind of about the push and pull between the sexes and this like beautiful dynamic that arises out of it, and kind of completing. I like circles because it's kind of life is a circle, and it kind of represents this this kind of bond and cycle that we all go through, and hopefully you're going through it together with somebody. And the different texture, kind of the piece on the right is simple and more patinaed color, where the one on the left and the connecting pieces are heavily textured, just kind of showing the difference is usually one person is takes up half of the dynamic of the relationship, and usually the other person is the complementary version of that.
Yeah, and so certainly an artwork statement talking about that would be a great opportunity to help us better understand how we're experiencing the work, and that seems like that could be an opportunity to engage and invite people to explore it further. Which it's two different experiences, just seeing the work and having our own initial reaction to it, and then starting to get an idea of the inspiration behind the work. Now, the other comment I think that Gordon made that's very apropos and important, and something that we all have to think about in some way, is that question of photography, and it's already come up a couple of times. Those of you who are painters, two-dimensional artists, wall art, face your own unique set of challenges when it comes to photography, in terms often of being able to capture obviously color, but also textures and surface quality of the work. And so that's certainly a set of challenges. I often think those challenges pale in comparison to the challenges that a three-dimensional artist faces in photographically capturing their work and sharing it, be it in a portfolio or online. It is just very difficult and challenging to be able to do that in an effective way and really, to a certain extent, replicate the experience that we would have if we were seeing the work in person. And so we already touched on a couple of ideas in terms of photoshopping the work into a space to give it some scale, or taking photos out on location to do the same thing in some context. But I wonder, do any of you here have additional ideas about how Josh might approach photography of the work in order to more effectively share it? Beverly, let me go to you.
I just had an idea on the spur of the moment that it would be really lovely to see them in the foundry, and having you beside them working on them, which would also show people how large they were. And I think people would be really interested in your process.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And not only does that start to help give some scale, and you wouldn't even really have to have photos of every single piece in your studio with you standing next to it. Even one or two photos like that instantly starts to give us context to better understand the scope of the work, and understand maybe a little bit of if not the process, at least a hint of what the process might be. So I love that idea of having a photo of the creative process in the studio.
And another point, just the circular one, the Between the Sexes, it's not clear if it's meant to be upright or lying down. So that would be interesting to show as well.
Good. Yeah, Josh, thoughts on that?
I do have, I didn't want it to be distracting, but I do have a photo of that where it's like over a dresser, in a nice home. And so I do include some of those photos. I guess I just
Awesome.
didn't know if it's distracting or not is kind of where I'm trying to find the line.
Yeah, that's a great question. Deborah, you've got a comment, if I can get you in.
Hi, everyone. I love this work, Josh, and I was trained as a sculptor myself. Right now, my work is paper sculpture in bas-relief. So I'm sort of in between what a painter and a sculptor looks for in their photographs. And I've learned to take the photos myself, but I have a lot of different lights, and I take it from a lot of different angles, so that when I show the work, for example, on my website, I have 2 side views. I have a view of it in a setting, and also what it looks like framed. But that's not an issue for you. But I do work so hard on trying to capture the 3-dimensionality of my work. So I would just say these look flat, especially this one against a white background, and I had no idea how big it was. The work is amazing, and I just keep doing it. Thanks.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's a great question and challenge that I think everyone is going to face as they're thinking about sharing their work photographically. But I think it's a great idea, Deborah's suggestion of multiple angles. I would think too, Josh, and obviously we're just seeing a very limited sample of the photos here, and but some detail shots showing us those textures that you're talking about. I would imagine, when you're creating your portfolio, unlike a painter where we all know kind of what to expect, and so just having a photo of the imagery is sufficient. It's likely that we're going to want to see several different shots of each individual piece, and it could be, not every piece needs to be shot on location, but maybe a few to give us context, multiple angles, detail shots. You've got a real opportunity and some work to be able to effectively share the work in a portfolio, it might take some tweaking to kind of figure out what the best approach is over time.
Can I make one comment about?
Yeah, Gordon, hop in.
So on one thing in terms of presentation that probably could be considered is the location or placement of a piece, and because these things just don't exist independently by themselves, and I just think about that and where would you place these things, and you had mentioned that put these things outside and stuff like that. Maybe with Photoshop to put it in a setting like that, or I'm not sure exactly how to accomplish that, but that's one thing that's lacking, I think, in the photographs. Obviously, is just the placement of that, or how you would experience it as a person. And so anyway, that's all I would say. It's probably like that with anything. I used to put my pictures and I would use Photoshop and create a floor and put a little person in there to have these, blow it up to like 6 by 6 feet and see what it would look like with 5 6 by 6 foot paintings on a blank wall, and put that in there to give a sense of how you relate to the work itself. So so that's just something, but it sounds like you're kind of established, you got a gallery, you got people, patrons and stuff like that look at it. It's probably not as critical, but I think having that, especially for something like this, for us looking at it, some kind of context of where you would place it, and at least to facilitate a conversation around it as well, because I think that's an important aspect of art itself, is where it is and how you experience it.
Yeah, and fortunately, you've got a nice long career ahead of you that you can kind of keep dialing it in. And I do think, even though perhaps the white background doesn't give us a ton of information, it's not a bad idea to have these in the mix. These photos do help us really focus on the piece and be able to kind of understand and very clearly see the composition of the work. Where you get it out into a park or something like that, now we've got a lot of distractions behind it. And so I think it's good to have both of
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I do see a suggestion from Beth. Is a 360-degree video ever used in an online portfolio? Yes, I mean that could be another possibility here. That seeing the work in the round, in a sense. I suspect too that as technology continues to progress, there are going to be more opportunities to get three-dimensional photos of work that allow us to see the work almost as if we were there in person. So a lot of great opportunities, and yes. Joshua's going to have to be a little bit more creative with his portfolio probably than most of us will need to be. Let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about pricing. Joshua, tell us a little bit about what your process has been. I've got a comment here from Michelle in New York who says, I can't figure out why the Infinity Bell that's the same size as others and also beautiful and evocative is priced so much lower than the others. Let's talk about pricing. Josh, how did you arrive at an approach to pricing your work, and what are some of the challenges there?
Okay, well, the challenges are kind of the same in the process, and I really do struggle there. My pricing tends to be based on time and materials, and I've had some other experienced sculptors tell me it should be time and materials times 4 to get to retail, and that is not where I'm at. To me, that would almost double the cost of the work, and the larger it gets, the easier I feel like it gets with that. But when I'm at like the Loveland Sculpture in the Park show, I'm competing with other bronze casters and stuff like that, and it's hard. Some of them, like, they're super experienced, but they price their work so low that it kind of skews the field, and so that's something I'm definitely struggling with. My work is pretty labor intensive, and I use really high grade materials, which tends to bump up the price a little bit as well. So I'm kind of struggling there, trying to find that balance between making a living and having a sellable price.
Yeah, Josh, that statement, labor intensive, kind of labor intensive, that feels like perhaps one of the strongest understatements that we have yet had expressed in one of these sessions. That, just looking at the work, we get a sense of the intensity, the craftsmanship that's going into creating the work, the textures. And so this is a real challenge. And you're right, as you're going into galleries and shows, you're going to be seen in the context of some other sculptors who are working with a different set of variables. If you're able to cast your work in editions, now you have the ability to amortize your costs over multiple iterations of that work, where as a fabricator, you're not going to be able to do that. And so that is going to be certainly one of the challenges that you face. I do think that where you get an advantage is that someone who's casting their work is going to have a very difficult time with the detail and textures and the work that you're producing. Your work produces a very different effect than cast work, and so I do think there's an opportunity to educate potential buyers on why this work is taking their breath away the way that other work maybe hasn't, and that can justify those higher price points. But I wonder, from those of us here in the group, what was your response as you saw Josh's pricing? What comments would you have on the value of the work? Let's see if I can get anyone to comment. Hold on here. Gordon, feel free, hop back in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on mute again. Anyway, I think we talked about this the other day. Just one comment about the pricing in terms of time material is, I think it was here we talked about it, where, if you think about an artwork, and some artwork, you just, you get this epiphany and you do this thing in like an hour, it's brilliant. The composition's terrific. And then there's others you struggle on and you change and all that kind of stuff. So one may take days and days, and the other one may take, a matter of a few hours. Is that one that takes a few hours worth less than the one that takes days and days and days to make? And my answer would be no. It would be, they're both equivalent. And so it's just something to me that I would factor into the pricing of it, that it's not just this is not just a labor thing. You're not just manufacturing something. And that, that's my perspective. So having said that, I don't really have any constructive on the pricing piece. I think the market establishes it, your reputation. There's so many things that come into establishing a price on something. But I think, you certainly have to factor in these beautiful materials and stuff like that. But this elegance that's achieved here is not something that, that's not something anybody can do that. That's really, to me, where the value of this thing is. It's a combination of the right material in the right way and the right composition that really create this very valuable piece. And so how you price that, I don't know, but it is valuable,
Yeah, let me echo that a little bit in that, this is where, we kind of do have to think a little bit about the difference between craft, if you will, and art, where, there is, every artist is also a craftsperson, and there is work that's going in, technical work that's going in to create a piece. But artistry is a bit beyond that, where there, as Gordon was mentioning, the compositions and the balance and the vision of the work, that it's a lot harder to quantify and value those aesthetic efforts. And so when it comes to pricing, that can prove to be a real challenge for an artist. You do have an advantage, Josh, in the sense that you already have the work out there and showing and selling. And to a certain extent, after those first few sales, which can feel a lot like guesswork, now it starts to become a function of supply and demand. As you're able to increase the exposure for your work and have more and more viewers responding to it and purchasing, that's going to start to deplete your inventory of available work. And as you start to struggle to keep up with that inventory, that's where you come in on the value side of the equation and start to increase the price as that demand increases. And maybe talk a little bit about that, Josh. What is demand for your work right now? Are you seeing a fairly steady clip of sales? Has it become kind of more of a reliable source of income for you, or is it still in fits and starts?
It's still a little bit in fits and starts. Well, it's actually been really good and kind of reliable, but totally unpredictable. 2020 was one of my best years. Some real big pieces sold really fast at the gallery. And then 2021, I started seeing a lot of commission work. And I actually really haven't added anything to my inventory since 2021 because I've been just commission, and then another one comes right at the end of that commission. And so I've just been, the last year and a half has been solely commission. So I'm kind of gearing up to do another production run right now.
Yeah, and so, boy, this introduces another very interesting dynamic. Painters will often run into this too, but especially sculptors who are working at a large scale and doing work that might be going into public spaces or institutional purchases and generates a lot of commissions. This becomes a bit of a balancing act where you can run into some real difficulties if you're only doing commissions and you're not having your work out there continually exposed to additional potential buyers, because eventually it comes to a point where you need to have that lifeblood of new people seeing the work, so that you can continue to have the commissions coming in and the spec sales, if you will. So it sounds to me like at some point you might need to start thinking about increasing the price point that you're putting on the commissions, both to increase the revenue that you're seeing from those, but also potentially to slow down the pace of the commission work so that you can shift over to do more production work. And boy, it's a little bit of a scary thing, right? Because if I've got these steady commissions, that's my bread and butter and food on the table. And, it's hard to think about giving some of that up. But again, hopefully you would be counterbalancing any commissions that you might lose by increasing the pricing, by increasing your profit on each of those commissions that you're producing. So it's a delicate, definitely a delicate balancing act when it comes to price. But you're in an advantageous situation to already have some good sales going. I wonder if anyone wants to, in fact, let me hop us out of here and let's get our faces back in front of us. Comments and additional thoughts in terms of what you might suggest for Josh's pricing or his approach moving forward. Some of us have been doing this maybe a little bit longer than Josh. If you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what advice might you give to Josh? Deborah, let me go to you first, and then the rest of you, if you want to click on the hand icon to get in with your comments, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Josh. A couple of things came to mind. I was told recently that my work would lend itself to being fabricated on a very large scale. And I got interested in that. There is an organization called CODAWORX, CODAWORX, like X-ray. And it's codaworks.com. If you want to go there, it's all about these large public projects that you can apply for, and your work would really lend itself to, these wonderful public spaces. So I would suggest maybe you try that. Also, I may be wrong, but I was told that when you list your size, that it goes height, width, and depth. So, and also I would definitely put the H, W, and D next to each one, because that really would help someone understand how big it is.
Yeah.
And
Deborah, I love those little details, right? They're such minor things potentially, but they can help in the long run. And I would echo what she says. It is a convention, at least in the gallery world and in the art world in general, to go height first. And
okay,
so
great.
That would be very helpful in looking at the work to have that order.
Great.
And just a couple more things. I also was told that you should put it in centimeters as well.
Oh.
And that gives you a more international kind of, approach to the work. And one other thing, I just had the experience of applying to some competition, and I was really working on the description of each piece, the story behind it, the emotions behind it. And I find that telling the story is so compelling and people connect to that so much. So I would suggest that you, if you haven't already, you probably have, but write a story for each piece. Write your background. What happened? Was it an accident? Was it, whatever happened in the process really helps people connect to it.
Yeah, we already got a little bit of a sense, just in the brief explanation that you gave of the Explorer and what it's about, and certainly in the disc piece, which I'm forgetting the title now, Between the Sexes. Even that little explanation really helped add to our experience of seeing the work. So great suggestions. Carol, let me pull you in.
Hi. Well, two things. One was on the piece, very minor, but on the piece Infinity Bell. The little what you call the piece that you hit the bell with, the little hammer is like distractingly small. Like I look at that and I'm like, what? And I have to double look at the dimensions and I go, what? I keep going back and forth, but like I don't get it. How big is that? It's like the size of a little toothpick, or else I'm not gauging the scale correctly. So that's just caught me off guard. It's probably just me, but it felt like it. And also I have several gongs in my house and built into the gong is like there'll be a little notch in the cross piece where the hammer hangs from, with a little leather tether. So that's just a thought. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, beautiful work. I immediately went to Google you to find your website, and I have not found it yet.
Interesting.
So
Rare Elements Studio would be the site, but I'll have to work on my my
SEO.
SEO, I guess.
yeah, because I was looking to see some maybe in situ pieces, photos, and a little bit more about you. I still have not found it. What was the name of it again? I'm sorry.
RareElementsStudio.com, and Elements has a Z at the end.
Yes. Oh boy, there's some good questions there, right? We do. Okay. We don't even have time to have the discussion that I'd love to have about branding and kind of thinking about that. And certainly I work with a number of artists who have created a studio name and have kind of built some branding around that. But as you are going out into the world and encountering people at shows and events, they're most likely to remember your name. Josh, you've got maybe a little bit more common name. There's going to be some competition for it out there. But anything that we can do to help them find your studio and your website is definitely going to be helpful. So we would want your name plastered all over your website. You can make your social media efforts tie into the website. And boy, if you are going to have a studio name as you do, and you're talking to people, you're going to want to emphasize that several times to kind of get that into their mind alongside your name. But boy, yeah, we want to be able to find you pretty quickly when they remember. I remember it was Josh Pass, but I can't remember his studio name. How can I find him? And Google is our friend in that regard if we do the SEO work there. Boy, we've run out of time. We've had a great discussion, Josh. I want to thank you for joining us for this session, for sharing your work. I think everyone here will agree with me that it seems that you've got a bright future ahead of you. I can definitely see your years of experience in working in jewelry production really seem to come through in just the amazing craftsmanship in the work that you're producing, while at the same time maintaining a very high level of artistry in the work. And so, boy, I think I would pass on my encouragement to keep pushing forward. And I'm sure everyone here will be looking forward to seeing how your work progresses. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. We will be back here next Wednesday for another... Oh, nope, sorry. Back up. I'm in the habit of saying that. Next week is spring break for my kids, so we will not be here next Wednesday. Glad I caught that. We won't be here next Wednesday. We'll be here the following Wednesday. Keep an eye out in your inbox for an announcement for the next session. But in the meantime, keep working, keep creating, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.